In 2018, researchers at the University of Pittsburgh discovered something shocking. People who spent just 30 minutes comparing themselves on social media felt an immediate drop in self-esteem and a rise in anxiety levels. 30 minutes was all it took to steal their confidence and replace it with quiet self-doubt. Think about that. A half hour of scrolling had the power to convince them they weren't enough, when in reality, nothing about their worth had changed. That's the silent poison of comparison. It blinds us to our own greatness while convincing us that someone else's highlight reel defines our value. In every corner of our modern world, there's a subtle thief that creeps into people's hearts. It doesn't wear a mask or carry a weapon. It doesn't knock at the door or break through the window. It slips in silently when you glance at someone else's life, when you measure your worth by their accomplishments, when you stare at your own reflection and wish it looked like someone else's. That thief has a name. It is comparison, and it robs us of something priceless. Joy is not a shallow smile you put on for the world. Joy is the deep-rooted sense of peace, contentment, and gratitude that allows you to breathe freely even when storms surround you. It is the calmness that whispers, "I am enough," when life feels uncertain. Yet comparison has the power to rip this away like a rug pulled from beneath your feet. The moment you start comparing, the ground of your soul shakes. You no longer walk in freedom, you walk in chains. Look at how easily this happens. A teenager scrolling through Instagram sees a classmate on vacation in Hawaii, posing on the beach with a perfect tan. Instantly, the thought enters, their life is better than mine. I'm missing out. A 40-year-old father notices his neighbor driving a brand new car into the driveway while his own vehicle is a decade old, and suddenly, the pride he once felt in providing for his family feels dim. A 60-year-old woman looks at a friend's retirement photos online, filled with travel, grandchildren, and wealth, and she begins to wonder if her own journey has been wasted. None of these people lost their value. None of them lost their blessings. But they lost their joy the moment they allowed comparison to dominate their thoughts. Psychology confirms this reality. Studies show that when people engage in upward comparison, looking at those they believe are ahead of them, they experience spikes in cortisol, the body's stress hormone. That hormone is the same chemical released in moments of danger. It tells your body to prepare for a threat. Imagine that your brain reacts to your friend's promotion or your neighbor's new home as though you were being chased by a predator. This is why your heart beats faster, your mood shifts, and your peace disappears when you compare. Is not harmless scrolling. Is not harmless self-talk. It is a physiological chain reaction that drains your strength. Divine wisdom has long spoken about this danger. In his writings, C.S. Lewis reminded us that pride and envy are two sides of the same coin, both born from comparison. He said, "We say that people are proud of being rich or clever or good-looking, but they are not. They are proud of being richer, cleverer, or better-looking than others." This observation cuts to the core. The danger is not the possession of gifts, talents, or blessings. The danger comes when our sense of identity is tethered to how those gifts appear next to someone else's. Pride looks sideways, never upward. And when you are trapped looking sideways, you can no longer see your own path. Think about this truth through the lens of everyday life. A young woman may spend hours comparing her body to fitness models online. She may adopt punishing diets, draining exercise routines, and endless self-criticism, all in pursuit of looking like someone else. Yet the tragic irony is that even if she achieves it, she still feels empty because comparison does not end with arrival. It shifts the goalposts. There's always someone fitter, younger, wealthier, more accomplished. Chasing joy through comparison is like chasing the horizon. It looks reachable, but the closer you run, the farther it drifts away. Comparison doesn't just rob joy, it rewrites your story with lies. It tells you that your life is behind schedule. It whispers that you are not as worthy as the person next door. It convinces you that your best effort is still not good enough. These lies are dangerous because repeated often enough, they become internal beliefs. And when people begin believing those lies, they stop dreaming. They stop trying. They shrink into smaller versions of themselves. One of the greatest tragedies of comparison is that it blinds us to what we already have. A person may be blessed with health, family, and meaningful work, yet one glance at someone else's success can erase gratitude in an instant. This is why gratitude and comparison cannot coexist. Gratitude says, "I am thankful for the life I have." Comparison says, "My life is worthless unless it looks like theirs." Gratitude gives birth to joy. comparison strangles it. Science has proven this too. Neuroscientists studying happiness found that people who consistently practice gratitude, listing even 3 small things they are thankful for daily, show increased activity in the brain's prefrontal cortex, the area associated with positive emotion and decision-making. On the flip side, people who constantly compare show heightened activity in the amygdala, the fear center of the brain. That means the simple act of shifting from comparison to gratitude literally changes your brain chemistry from fear to joy. The battlefield is not out there, it is in your mind. C.S. Lewis, with his profound spiritual insight, hinted at why comparison feels so heavy. He suggested that when we compare ourselves endlessly, we are really crying out for something eternal, something infinite. Our souls were designed to find worth in something beyond human measure. That is why worldly comparison never satisfies. No matter how high you climb on the ladder of success, the ladder never reaches the sky. But when you root your identity in something divine, something unshakable, comparison loses its grip. You no longer need to be better than anyone else. You simply need to be faithful to your own calling. Think about the story of 2 musicians. The first spends her career obsessing over awards, streams, and applause. She compares herself to every artist who sells more albums or fills larger stadiums. Even when she succeeds, the joy is short-lived because the bar keeps moving. The second musician writes and sings with authenticity, pouring heart and soul into every note. She is not immune to comparison, but she returns to the joy of creating each time she's tempted to measure herself against others. At the end of their lives, who has truly lived with joy? Not the one who chased comparisons, but the one who embraced authenticity. Now, take this example into your own world. A 13-year-old comparing grades in school may feel less intelligent, not realizing they are gifted in creativity. A 30-year-old comparing careers may feel stuck, not realizing they are building character and resilience in ways their peers are not. A 70-year-old comparing health may feel fragile, not realizing the wisdom of their years is more powerful than the body's fading strength. Every stage of life carries its own gifts, but comparison blinds us to them. There is also a deep social cost to comparison. When people compare, they stop celebrating others. Instead of rejoicing in someone else's victory, they feel threatened by it. Instead of offering encouragement, they offer silent envy. Relationships weaken, communities fracture, and isolation grows. The truth is that life was never meant to be a race against one another. Life was meant to be a shared journey where each unique contribution enriches the whole. But comparison shifts us from community into competition, and competition without compassion kills connection. Fear is another chain attached to comparison. Fear that you are falling behind. Fear that you are not good enough. Fear that others are watching and judging. Fear of being invisible in a world obsessed with visibility. Fear will always thrive where comparison lives because comparison paints life as a scoreboard where you're either winning or losing. Yet real life is not a scoreboard. Real life is a canvas, and your colors are not supposed to look like anyone else's. To live free from this trap requires courage. It requires the courage to look at your life as it is and say, "This is mine. This is sacred. This is worthy." It requires the courage to shut down the voices that say you should be more like someone else. It requires the courage to embrace gratitude in a culture obsessed with comparison. But courage births freedom. Freedom from the weight of constantly measuring yourself. Freedom from the anxiety of never being enough. Freedom to walk your path with joy. This message matters not just because comparison steals joy, but because joy is the fuel for everything meaningful in life. A joyful person works with energy. A joyful parent loves with patience. A joyful student learns with curiosity. A joyful leader inspires with vision. Joy is the strength that carries us through the darkest nights. And comparison, left unchecked, drains that fuel until people run on empty. The choice is in front of you every single day. When you open your phone, when you glance across the street, when you walk into a room filled with people, you can either allow comparison to steal your joy, or you can guard it with gratitude, perspective, and faith. You can either shrink into envy or rise into authenticity. The wisdom of C.S. Lewis reminds us that pride and comparison lead nowhere but emptiness. Psychology reminds us that comparison rewires the brain toward fear. Science reminds us that gratitude rewires it toward joy. Faith reminds us that your worth was never meant to be measured against another. And life itself reminds us that no one else can live your story. Comparison is the thief of joy, and joy is too precious to surrender. So guard it, cherish it, and protect it fiercely. Celebrate others without measuring yourself against them. Walk your path without staring at someone else's lane. Find gratitude in the blessings you already hold. Anchor your worth in something unshakable. And when the thief of comparison comes knocking, refuse to open the door. Because your joy is not just about feeling happy. Your joy is the foundation of your strength, the engine of your growth, and the light that others need to see. Do not let comparison steal it. Every person who has ever walked this earth carries something sacred inside them, a blueprint of existence that cannot be duplicated or erased. When C.S. Lewis wrote about the nature of the soul, he often spoke about individuality not as an accident, but as intentional design. Think about this truth for a moment. Out of billions of people who have lived before you, who are alive today, and who will be born in centuries to come, there will never be another you. Not another voice with the same tone, not another heart that beats with the exact rhythm, not another mind that filters experience through the same lens. You are the only edition of your story. That uniqueness is divine. The world often trains people to think in terms of comparison, competition, and categories. From the time children step into classrooms, they are measured against the student next to them. Grades, ranks, trophies, scholarships, everything screams for comparison. The workplace echoes the same tune with promotions, salaries, and positions on the corporate ladder. Even families sometimes unintentionally add fuel by praising one sibling's achievement in a way that makes the other feel smaller. All these external voices condition the mind to look outward for validation. Yet Lewis would remind us that the most important voice is not outside but above and within. The Creator never stamped the same soul twice. That means your worth is not a race, it is a revelation. Think about nature for a moment. No one looks at a rose and scolds it for not being a sunflower. No one watches an eagle soar and criticizes it for not swimming like a dolphin. Each creation has its role, its brilliance, and its beauty. The absurdity of comparison in nature is obvious, yet humans fall into this trap daily. A student with artistic vision feels unworthy because he is not a math prodigy. A mother nurturing her children feels small compared to her friend who launched a business. A retiree feels irrelevant because their peers are traveling the world while they are tending a small garden. But in truth, the garden matters, the child matters, the art matters. When you step back and see life through divine perspective, you realize the uniqueness of your design is not just acceptable, it is intentional. Science reinforces this sacred uniqueness. Geneticists tell us that your DNA sequence is unlike any other combination in human history. Even identical twins, who share extraordinary similarities, have variations in gene expression that make them one of a kind. Neuroscience tells us that your brain is shaped by every memory, every joy, every heartbreak you've ever lived. The very structure of your neural pathways is like a fingerprint etched into your mind, never to be replicated. Psychology tells us that your personality emerges through a complex blend of biology and environment, shaping a tapestry of traits no one else will ever fully carry. If science itself testifies to your uniqueness, why spend your days trying to imitate someone else's blueprint? The problem is that people often reject the beauty of their uniqueness because it does not align with society's definition of success. A teenager who writes poetry feels embarrassed because her peers celebrate athletes. A young man who enjoys working with his hands feels lesser because college culture glorifies corporate jobs. A woman who dedicates her life to raising her children may feel invisible because society praises high-powered careers. Yet the truth is the world needs all of these paths. The poet helps us feel. The craftsman helps us build. The mother shapes souls that shape nations. Every role is divine. Every life is a thread in a vast tapestry that would be incomplete without it. C.S. Lewis once wrote that there are no ordinary people. Every person you meet is an eternal being, carrying weight and glory beyond what eyes can see. That means even the most overlooked life is extraordinary in the eyes of eternity. The janitor sweeping the floor in a school is not just a worker, he is part of the story that shapes young lives. The nurse sitting at the bedside of a patient at midnight is not just doing a job. She is embodying compassion that echoes through generations. The young boy struggling with dyslexia is not broken. He may carry the kind of imagination that shifts the world in ways textbooks cannot measure. When you see identity through divine perspective, you realize that no life is common. No soul is replaceable. The danger of comparison is that it blinds you to this truth. When you spend your energy trying to be someone else, you abandon the sacred responsibility of being yourself. That abandonment is not small, it is tragic. The world is robbed of your unique contribution. Think of a symphony where every instrument tries to sound like the violin. The richness disappears. The beauty collapses. Harmony is lost. Life works the same way. The world does not need more copies. It needs authentic voices, authentic gifts, authentic lives. Fear often drives people away from embracing their uniqueness. Fear whispers, what if I am not good enough as I am? What if people don't accept me? What if my path looks too different? Those questions haunt the heart. Yet the truth is that courage is not found in conforming, it is found in authenticity. People may laugh at what they don't understand, but history honors those who dare to be different. From inventors to artists, leaders to visionaries, every breakthrough came from someone who stopped comparing and started embracing their divine identity. There is also a psychological weight to denying your uniqueness. When you constantly suppress your real self to fit into molds, you create inner conflict. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance. When your actions are not aligned with your true values, it creates stress, anxiety, and even depression. On the other hand, authenticity reduces stress, improves relationships, and increases life satisfaction. Why? Because your soul is no longer fighting itself. You are aligned. You are whole. You are free. Think about children for a moment. They do not struggle with comparison in the way adults do. A child draws a picture and proudly shows it to anyone nearby, even if it scribbles on paper. A child dances with abandon, not caring if the moves look strange. A child asks questions endlessly, not embarrassed by curiosity. Their identity is still untouched by the poison of comparison. Somewhere along the way, though, adults forget that childlike freedom. They trade it for self-consciousness, for measuring sticks, for artificial standards. Yet that child still lives inside every adult, waiting to be set free. The divine identity never disappears. It just gets buried beneath fear and comparison. The truth of uniqueness also carries responsibility. If your design is one of a kind, then your contribution cannot be outsourced. No one else can bring your exact voice into the world. No one else can raise your children the way you can. No one else can offer the kindness that comes from your heart, shaped by your experiences. No one else can write your book, sing your song, or tell your story with your exact perspective. That means the world is waiting for something only you can bring. If you withhold it because of comparison, that gift may never come to light. Some people hear this and feel overwhelmed. They think, what if I fail at being me? The truth is that you cannot fail at being yourself. You may fail at imitating someone else. You may stumble if you chase a path never meant for you. But if you walk your path authentically, there is no failure, only growth, learning, and impact. C.S. Lewis often spoke of calling and destiny not as flawless execution, but as faithful journey. Faithfulness to your divine identity is the real success. Think of a farmer planting seeds. He does not compare his corn to his neighbor's wheat. He tends his field with care, knowing that harvest takes time, knowing that what grows will reflect what was planted. Your life is the same. Your seeds are not your neighbor's seeds. Your harvest will not look like anyone else's harvest. The question is not whether your field looks like another's, but whether you are faithful with what was entrusted to you. Every spiritual tradition echoes this truth in some way, that life is sacred, that souls are unique, that identity is not an accident. Even outside of faith, there is a deep human hunger to feel significant, to feel irreplaceable. That hunger is not a flaw, it is a sign. It points to the reality that you were never meant to be a carbon copy. You were meant to be a living original. When you accept this, joy follows, peace follows, gratitude follows. Not because your life is suddenly easier or more glamorous, but because your eyes shift. You stop looking sideways and start looking upward and inward. You stop chasing someone else's definition of success and start building your own. You stop shrinking under comparison and start growing under authenticity. The truth is simple but profound. Your identity is divine. Your uniqueness is intentional. Your story is sacred. Comparison will always tempt you to trade it away, but the price is too high. Your soul was not designed for imitation. It was designed for authenticity. And when you live in that truth, you don't just find freedom for yourself, you give permission to others to do the same. One authentic life can ripple through generations, breaking chains of comparison and lighting the path for those who follow. When people doubt their worth, they often look outward, trying to measure themselves against others. They forget that science itself testifies to their irreplaceable value. Every fiber of your being, every cell, every neural pathway is shouting the truth that you are one of a kind. It's not just a poetic phrase, it's a biological, neurological, and psychological reality. The deeper science looks into the human body and mind, the clearer it becomes that no copy of you exists, and no copy will ever exist again. Start with the blueprint of life, DNA. Scientists discovered that if you took the DNA in one single cell of your body and stretched it out, it would be about 6 feet long. If you placed all the DNA from your body, end to end, it could travel to the sun and back more than 600 times. That is how much information is packed into you. And not one other person in the history of humanity has had the same exact sequence as you. The odds of another person having your precise genetic code are astronomically impossible. Even identical twins who share the closest match develop differences in the way their genes are expressed. That means the microscopic code running through your veins has never existed before and never will again. You are literally written into existence with a signature that cannot be forged. Now consider what happens as life unfolds. Your brain is not a fixed organ. It is a living, dynamic system. Every thought, every experience, every heartbreak, every joy reshapes the wiring of your brain. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, and it means that your brain constantly adapts and transforms based on what you live through. No two people experience life the same way, and no two brains record it the same way. Imagine a soldier returning from war, a mother giving birth, a student conquering the fear of public speaking, an artist pouring themselves into a canvas. Each experience literally etches new pathways into brain. That is why even if someone copied every detail of your life story, they still could not replicate the inner architecture of your mind. Your brain is as unique as your fingerprint. Psychologists add another layer to this truth. Personality is not simply a product of genetics or environment, it is the dance between them. You may be born with certain temperaments, but the way those traits express themselves depends on the environment that shapes you. A child born with a naturally cautious temperament might grow into an anxious adult if surrounded by fear, or into a thoughtful and wise adult if nurtured with encouragement. Two siblings raised under the same roof may process the same events in completely different ways, creating personalities that diverge drastically. This complex interplay ensures that the person you become cannot be duplicated, even by those who share your bloodline. Think about memories. Memory is not a simple recording device. It is creative and deeply personal. The brain does not store events like files on a computer. It reconstructs them each time you recall them, shaped by your perspective, your emotions, and your growth. That means your memories are living stories, unique in how they are remembered and reinterpreted. Two friends may attend the same concert, yet years later their memories of that night will be entirely different because their brains filtered the event through different emotions and expectations. This means that your life story as it exists in your mind is unlike anyone else's story, not just in content, but in perception. When you see these truths through the lens of motivation, the message is powerful. If your DNA is one of a kind, if your brain's wiring is unrepeatable, if your memories and personality are unreproducible, then you have no competitor. You are not in a race to be someone else because science itself proves no one else can be you. That means every time you compare yourself to others, you are ignoring scientific evidence of your uniqueness. You are rejecting what biology, neuroscience, and psychology already confirm. You are irreplaceable. Think about how this changes perspective. A teenager scrolling through social media may believe they are not attractive enough compared to celebrities. Yet biology proves that their genetic code has never been repeated, which means their features are a once-in-history combination. A young adult struggling to find their career path may feel behind their peers. Yet neuroscience proves that their brain is wiring itself in a way that could lead to insights and abilities no one else will discover in the same way. A grandparent may feel outdated in a fast-changing world. Yet psychology proves that their experiences have formed wisdom no one else can replicate. Every stage of life carries irreplaceable value. Comparison collapses when you face the truth of uniqueness. When you compare, you assume that life is about being more like someone else. But science shows that it is about being fully yourself. The eagle does not envy the fish because its wings are designed for flight. The oak tree does not envy the rose because its strength is in its roots. In the same way, your DNA, your brain, your personality, your memories, all of them point toward a design that was never meant to be duplicated. There's also a freedom that comes from embracing this truth. So many people live under the weight of expectations, parents wanting them to achieve certain goals, society defining success through wealth or beauty, peers setting invisible standards. These expectations push people to compare and compete endlessly. Yet when you recognize that your identity is grounded in scientific and divine uniqueness, you step off that treadmill. You stop racing towards someone else's finish line. You start walking your own path. This truth should not only inspire, but also comfort. People often fear being overlooked, forgotten, or insignificant. They fear disappearing in a sea of billions. Yet science whispers reassurance. Your uniqueness guarantees that you are not invisible. You carry a design that cannot be erased or replaced. Even if the world overlooks you, even if people misunderstand you, your existence has already been marked as extraordinary by the sheer fact of your unrepeatable design. There is also a challenge here. If you are one of a kind, then your contribution to the world is something only you can give. No one else can love your family in the precise way you do. No one else can create art or music or business or acts of kindness in the same way. No one else can bring your exact mixture of talents, scars, lessons, and dreams into reality. That means the responsibility is heavy but also beautiful. You are called to bring forth what only you can bring. If you bury your uniqueness under comparison, the world loses something sacred. History reminds us of this truth. The scientists, artists, and leaders who changed the world were not those who try to imitate others, but those who embrace their uniqueness. Albert Einstein struggled in traditional schooling, yet reshaped physics because his mind worked differently. Maya Angelou used her voice not by imitating other poets, but by pouring her authentic soul into words. Steve Jobs revolutionized technology not by following the existing mold, but by daring to blend creativity with engineering in a way no one else had attempted. Their contributions were possible only because they leaned into their uniqueness. At the same time, uniqueness is not limited to the famous. Ordinary people living ordinary lives embody extraordinary uniqueness. The grandmother who bakes bread with recipes passed down for generations is carrying culture and memory no one else can replicate. The father who teaches his child how to ride a bike brings patience and love in a way that no other man could. The neighbor who tends a community garden creates connection and nourishment in a way that technology cannot replace. Each act, each role, each life carries value that cannot be measured against another. When you embrace your uniqueness, comparison loses its grip. You stop asking, "Am I better than them?" and start asking, "Am I being true to myself?" That shift brings peace. It brings focus. It allows you to celebrate others without feeling threatened because their uniqueness does not diminish yours. Two stars in the night sky do not compete, they both shine. Your uniqueness does not reduce theirs, and theirs does not reduce yours. C.S. Lewis often reminded readers that human beings are eternal souls. If that is true, then science is not the enemy of faith, but the echo of it. Biology, neuroscience, psychology, all of them testify that uniqueness is woven into every layer of human existence. That testimony should awaken awe. It should remind you that you are not random. You are not replaceable. You are not small. When you walk in this truth, life feels lighter. You no longer chase shadows of others. You no longer waste energy wishing to be someone else. You begin to honor your story, your scars, your journey. You begin to live fully awake to the reality that your presence on this earth is not an accident, but a once-in-history event. So the next time you are tempted to compare, remember what science has already proven. Remember that your DNA is unrepeatable. Remember that your brain's wiring is unique. Remember that your memories and personality are beyond duplication. Remember that even if billions walk the earth, there's only one you. And that truth is enough to silence comparison. That truth is enough to restore joy. That truth is enough to remind you that you are irreplaceable. Fear is a strange companion. It creeps into your mind quietly, often disguised as motivation, ambition, or even admiration. When you look at someone else's success, you tell yourself you're just being inspired, but beneath the surface, something darker begins to grow. You start to measure yourself not by who you are, but by how far you are from someone else. What begins as a glance turns into a pattern, and what begins as curiosity turns into self-doubt. Comparison doesn't invite you to grow. It builds a cage where fear becomes the master of your thoughts. Think about how a child learns to walk. The child stumbles, falls, and tries again. There is no comparison in their mind. There's only the drive to take the next step. If that child, still wobbly on tiny legs, looked across the street at a grown athlete sprinting at full speed and decided, "I'm not good enough to even try," they would never learn to walk. Yet adults do this every day. We look at people in different chapters of life and allow their progress to convince us that our journey is too slow, too weak, too small. What might have been growth turns into paralysis, and what might have been courage turns into fear. Fear born from comparison is subtle. It doesn't shout, it whispers. You see someone with more money, and it whispers that you will never be enough. You see someone with more beauty, and it whispers that you will always fall short. You see someone with more knowledge, and it whispers that you are behind. These whispers accumulate until they grow into a roar inside your head, convincing you to shrink instead of expand, convincing you to hide instead of try. Fear is rarely a monster in plain sight. It is often the quiet erosion of self-belief that comes when you let someone else's journey become your measuring stick. There is a truth many people miss. Comparison and growth do not live in the same house. Growth requires courage, and courage can only breathe where fear is starved. When you compare yourself, you feed fear, and when fear grows stronger, growth withers. A musician who compares themselves to the greatest performers in the world might never pick up their instrument again, not because they lack talent, but because fear convinces them their sound will never measure up. An entrepreneur with a dream might look at billion-dollar companies and never launch their idea, not because the idea is bad, but because fear whispers it is already too late. Growth dies in the soil of comparison because fear poisons the roots. Think of how fear changes behavior. When you live in fear, you avoid risks. You avoid trying new things because you believe you'll fail before you even start. Fear makes you choose safety over progress and safety over passion. It pushes you into routines that are comfortable but stagnant. Growth, on the other hand, requires stepping into the unknown. It demands mistakes, failures, lessons, and resilience. Comparison stops you before you even begin that journey. It convinces you that others are so far ahead that your first step is worthless. And when you believe that, you trade your potential for paralysis. There is also an emotional toll. Fear that comes from comparison doesn't just keep you from growing, it steals your joy in the process. You can no longer enjoy your achievements because they seem small next to someone else's. You can no longer celebrate your milestones because they feel insignificant in the shadow of another's. You buy a car and feel proud until you see someone with a better one. You graduate and feel accomplished until you see someone graduate with higher honors. You launch a small business and feel excited until you see another person's business making more profit. Fear transforms your joy into bitterness and your gratitude into discontent. It convinces you that nothing you do is ever enough. But the cruelest part is that comparison makes fear endless. There will always be someone richer, smarter, stronger, or more accomplished. If your worth is tied to comparison, then fear will never loosen its grip because you will never reach the end of the race. Even if you become the best in one category, someone will surpass you in another. You might become wealthy, but find someone healthier. You might become famous, but find someone happier. Fear multiplies because comparison has no finish line. It is a treadmill that exhausts you, but takes you nowhere. Fear also affects relationships. Instead of celebrating others, you begin to resent them. Instead of admiring their growth, you see it as a threat to your own. You distance yourself from people who could inspire you because their success makes you feel small. This isolates you and robs you of genuine connections. Comparison doesn't just destroy self-growth, it corrodes community. Fear tells you that life is a competition where others' victories equal your defeats, and in believing this lie, you lose the joy of shared humanity. There is a better way to look at others. Imagine walking through a garden. Each flower blooms in its own season. The rose doesn't fear the tulip, and the sunflower doesn't envy the daisy. They all contribute to the beauty of the garden by being fully themselves. If one flower compared its bloom to another, it would wither before its time. Life is the same. Growth happens when you focus on your soil, your sunlight, your water. Fear dies when you stop glancing sideways and start rooting yourself in your own ground. Science even shows the impact of fear on growth. Fear triggers the amygdala, the part of your brain designed for survival. When the amygdala is active, your body goes into fight or flight mode. Creativity shuts down. Problem-solving weakens. Long-term planning fades. Your brain focuses only on surviving, not thriving. This means that when you live in comparison-driven fear, your brain is literally less capable of growth. You cannot innovate or imagine while your nervous system is hijacked by fear. Growth requires a calm, open, curious mind, and comparison destroys that state by keeping you locked in survival. Courage is the antidote. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the decision to move forward despite it. Growth blooms in courage because courage allows mistakes, embraces learning, and celebrates small steps. To live courageously, you must refuse to measure yourself against others. You must remind yourself that your journey is unique, your timing is your own, and your worth is not negotiable. When you root yourself in courage, fear loses its grip, and growth becomes natural. There are countless stories of people who overcame comparison and broke free from fear. J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times before a publisher finally accepted Harry Potter. If she had compared her rejections to other authors' successes, fear would have silenced her forever. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. If he had compared himself to other creators and believed he was not good enough, Disneyland would never exist. These stories remind us that fear fed by comparison kills dreams before they even begin, while courage kills fear and gives birth to growth. Even in ordinary lives, this truth plays out. A young woman afraid to post her artwork online compares herself to professional painters and decides her work is worthless. A man who wants to start jogging compares himself to marathon runners and gives up before lacing his shoes. A teenager compares their grades to a classmate's and stops trying because they believe they will never measure up. In each case, growth is strangled not by lack of ability, but by the fear that comparison created. When you recognize this, you begin to see comparison for what it truly is, a thief. It robs you of joy, progress, courage, and peace. Growth requires freedom, and comparison chains you to fear. If you want to grow, you must break those chains. You must stop asking how far behind you are and start asking how far you've come. You must stop focusing on what others are building and start focusing on the brick in your hand. Growth does not happen by looking outward. It happens by looking inward and forward. Life is not about beating others to the finish line. Life is about becoming the fullest version of yourself. Fear shrinks that vision, while courage expands it. Comparison fuels fear, and fear suffocates growth. But when you release comparison, you release fear, and when you release fear, you invite growth to flourish. So let this truth settle into your heart. You are not here to compete. You are here to create. You are not here to shrink in the shadow of others. You are here to shine in your own light. Fear will always knock, but you do not have to let it in. Comparison will always tempt, but you do not have to bow to it. Growth is waiting on the other side of courage, and courage begins the moment you decide that your journey matters, even if it looks nothing like theirs. There is something inside every human being that longs for fulfillment, a hunger deeper than money, fame, or status. It is the quiet desire to know that our life mattered, that we left something behind that breathed light into others. Yet so many of us confuse fulfillment with achievement, and in that confusion, we get trapped in competition. We chase titles, we race against others, we compare numbers, and we measure our days by victories that vanish as quickly as they come. The truth is that none of these things fill the soul. What truly brings lasting satisfaction is not how far ahead of others you are, but how much you poured into the lives around you. Fulfillment is found in contribution, not competition. Competition creates a false promise. It tells you that if you beat enough people, if you climb higher than the rest, if you win enough races, you will finally feel at peace. Yet how many stories have we seen of those who stood at the top of their fields, but felt completely empty inside? They had the medals, the trophies, the wealth, and the applause, but when the noise faded, their hearts still whispered, "There must be more." That whisper is the call of contribution. It is the voice of the soul reminding us that we were designed to give, to serve, to build, to love, and to uplift. Competing may bring temporary thrills, but only contributing brings eternal meaning. Think about how fleeting competition is. The fastest runner today will be overtaken tomorrow. The richest entrepreneur today may fall behind in a year. The most followed influencer today will be replaced in the endless scroll of social media. When you live for competition, your worth becomes tied to a fragile crown that can be taken away at any moment. The weight of constantly trying to outdo others crushes your joy because you can never rest. There's always someone younger, stronger, or more talented waiting to take your place. That is not fulfillment, that is slavery dressed as ambition. Contribution, on the other hand, is untouchable. When you pour kindness into someone's life, no one can erase it. When you give wisdom, love, or guidance, it ripples through generations long after your name is forgotten. A teacher who mentors a struggling child may never trend online, but the impact of that encouragement could shape the destiny of a future leader. A nurse who comforts a patient in pain may not receive a standing ovation, but that moment of compassion may be the only light that person felt in their darkest hour. These contributions outlast competition because they are engraved in the human heart. Spiritual traditions across the world remind us of this truth. Ancient scriptures say that we are not here to boast in ourselves, but to serve others. C.S. Lewis wrote that true greatness is found in humility, in the ability to look away from our own glory and toward the needs of others. From a divine perspective, your worth has never been tied to how you rank against another, but to how faithfully you pour your unique gifts into the world. The person who sweeps streets with love and diligence contributes more to the human story than the one who wins hollow competitions without kindness in their heart. Psychology also confirms this. Studies have shown that people who focus on contribution experience higher levels of happiness, reduce depression, and even longer lifespans. Volunteering, acts of service, and helping others release oxytocin and endorphins, the body's natural feel-good chemicals. This is why helping a stranger, mentoring a student, or simply giving a listening ear to a friend often leaves you with a sense of joy deeper than any prize could bring. Your biology itself is designed to reward contribution because it aligns with the purpose of your soul. Think about how life feels when you are only competing. You wake up thinking about who is ahead of you and who is behind you. You measure your worth by numbers, grades, income, likes, awards. The result is anxiety because you know deep down those numbers will never satisfy. But when you focus on contribution, the entire texture of your days changes. You wake up thinking about how to make today count for someone else. Your energy shifts from insecurity to generosity, from fear to purpose. The joy you feel is no longer stolen by comparison because you're no longer racing anyone, you are simply giving. History is filled with people who chose contribution over competition. Mother Teresa never won a contest, yet her life of service inspired millions and continues to inspire long after her passing. Martin Luther King Jr. did not seek to be richer than others. He sought to give his voice to justice, and his contribution changed the course of a nation. Albert Einstein's greatest joy was not in competing with other scientists, but in contributing insights that would expand human understanding of the universe. Their legacies endure because they chose to give instead of to outshine. Even in ordinary homes and neighborhoods, the same truth holds power. A mother raising children is making a contribution that will shape society, even if no one applauds her daily sacrifices. A man coaching local kids on weekends may never make headlines, but his contribution plants seeds of discipline, teamwork, and confidence in young lives. An elderly neighbor baking cookies for the kids down the street contributes love in simple acts that ripple through a community. These contributions may look small compared to grand competitions, but they are the foundation upon which a meaningful life is built. The soul knows this difference instinctively. When you win a competition, the excitement fades quickly. You enjoy the applause, you savor the recognition, but soon you are left searching for the next victory. The high never lasts, but when you make a genuine contribution, the warmth remains. You remember the gratitude in someone's eyes, the smile you sparked, the life you touched. That memory does not fade because it is woven into the fabric of who you are. Contribution nourishes the giver as much as it blesses the receiver. There is also freedom in living for contribution. Competition chains you to outcomes you cannot control. You can work hard, but you cannot control who else shows up, what resources they have, or what luck favors them. When your worth depends on beating others, your peace is at the mercy of circumstances. Contribution sets you free because you can always give something, no matter your situation. You may not be the wealthiest, but you can contribute generosity. You may not be the most talented, but you can contribute effort. You may not be the loudest, but you can contribute kindness. No one can take away your ability to give, and that makes fulfillment always within reach. Imagine standing at the end of your life looking back. What will matter? Will it be how many people you outperformed or how many people you uplifted? Will you smile at the trophies gathering dust or at the memories of the lives you touched? Every person who reaches that final chapter learns the same lesson. Competition fades, contribution lasts. Those who chase comparison are left with regret, but those who gave freely are left with peace. This truth should shake us awake. If you are spending your energy trying to outshine others, you are wasting your soul on shadows. The people who seem ahead of you are not your rivals, they are fellow travelers. The only question worth asking is, what can I give today? That question dissolves envy, breaks fear, and ignites joy. Contribution does not diminish you, it multiplies you. What you give away does not leave you empty, it makes you abundant. So let your life be measured not by the competitions you win, but by the contributions you make. Let your heart beat not for applause, but for impact. Let your worth rise not from how high you climbed, but from how many you lifted as you climbed. Real fulfillment is waiting there, in the quiet power of giving, in the sacred act of pouring yourself into others. Competition may dazzle the crowd, but contribution lights the soul. Freedom is a word that stirs something deep in the human heart. People have fought wars for it, marched in the streets for it, and dreamed of it in the darkest prisons. Yet the greatest prison of all is often invisible, built not with walls or chains, but with our own thoughts. The prison of self-rejection, the endless fight to be someone we are not, the restless hunger to fit into molds carved by others. We talk about freedom as if it lives outside of us, but the truth is that freedom begins within. You can walk through a wide-open field and still feel trapped if you carry the weight of self-loathing. You can live in the wealthiest nation and still be in bondage if you hate the reflections staring back at you. The real freedom, the kind that gives peace and joy, is born the moment you accept yourself fully. Self-acceptance does not mean settling for less. It does not mean refusing to grow. It means embracing the truth of who you are right now with all your strengths and flaws, while also honoring your capacity to become more. It is the ability to look at your scars and say they are not shameful, they are part of your story. It is the courage to look at your gifts and say they are not accidents, they are part of your purpose. When you accept yourself, you step out of the endless war against your own soul, and only then can you live free. So many people live in constant battle with themselves. They compare their bodies to impossible standards, their achievements to unreachable heights, their personalities to unrealistic expectations. Every day becomes a war of trying to prove they are worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of existing. That war is exhausting. It drains energy that could be used for creativity, connection, and growth. It locks people into a cycle where no achievement is ever enough, no approval satisfies, no applause lasts. They live chained to an image of perfection that does not exist, and those chains rob them of joy. Self-acceptance breaks those chains. When you begin to see yourself not as a mistake to be fixed, but as a masterpiece in progress, you reclaim your energy. You stop hiding and start living. You stop apologizing for existing and start showing up fully. You stop asking, "Am I enough?" and start declaring, "I am already worthy." That shift is where freedom begins. It is not arrogance, it is liberation. Arrogance demands to be better than everyone else. Acceptance simply allows you to be yourself without shame. There is a deep psychological truth behind this. Studies show that people who practice self-acceptance experience lower levels of stress, greater resilience, and higher overall life satisfaction. When you accept yourself, your nervous system relaxes. You are no longer in constant survival mode, trying to win approval or outrun judgment. Instead, you settle into a state where growth can flourish naturally. Acceptance opens the door for change because it removes the fear that you are never enough. You cannot grow from hatred of yourself. You grow when you nurture yourself. Self-acceptance is not the end of growth. It is the soil in which true growth takes root. Think about how children learn. A child who feels loved and accepted will try, fail, and try again because they know their worth does not depend on perfection. A child who feels rejected or compared will often shut down, afraid to make mistakes. Adults are no different. When you live in self-rejection, fear paralyzes you. When you live in self-acceptance, courage blossoms. Freedom is not about avoiding mistakes. It is about being unafraid to make them, knowing they do not diminish your worth. Spiritual wisdom also speaks of this freedom. C.S. Lewis wrote that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Self-acceptance aligns with that truth. When you stop obsessing over how inadequate you are, you create space to focus on others, to give, to love, to create. The divine design placed within you was never meant to be hidden under layers of shame. You were not created to live as a copy of someone else. You were created to be the fullest version of yourself. Accepting that gift is not pride, it is obedience to the purpose planted in you. Every person carries flaws, insecurities, and regrets. Self-acceptance does not erase them, but it transforms how you see them. The scar from a failure becomes a reminder of resilience. The awkwardness of your personality becomes a part of your unique charm. The mistakes of your past become lessons that sharpen your wisdom. Without acceptance, those things weigh you down like stones in your pockets. With acceptance, they become stepping stones beneath your feet. Freedom comes when you stop dragging your past like a burden and start walking on it like a path forward. Consider how much time people lose to self-rejection. Hours spent in front of mirrors criticizing their bodies. Days wasted replaying conversations, regretting every word. Years consumed by the fear of not being good enough to pursue dreams. Entire lives lost to the illusion that once they fix everything about themselves, they will finally be free. Yet freedom is not at the end of fixing. It is at the beginning of accepting. You do not need to erase who you are to be free. You need to embrace who you are. Think of a bird in the sky. It does not ask whether its wings are perfect. It does not compare its song to another bird's melody. It simply flies because it was created to fly. Humans are the only creatures who doubt their own design. We spend so much time wishing to be different that we forget to soar with the wings we already have. Self-acceptance is the moment you open those wings without apology. Freedom is not waiting for a different body, a different past, or a different personality. Freedom is using what you already carry to live fully now. There are people who spend decades chasing the approval of others, and when they finally get it, they still feel empty. That emptiness comes from the fact that no amount of external validation can replace internal acceptance. You can receive applause from thousands and still feel unworthy if you have not accepted yourself. You can have beauty admired by millions and still feel ugly if you hate your own reflection. External validation is fragile because it depends on others. Internal acceptance is unshakable because it depends only on you. Think of those who inspire us most. They are rarely the ones who pretend to be perfect. They are often the ones who embrace their imperfections openly, who walk in authenticity. People are drawn to authenticity because it carries a freedom that is contagious. When someone lives fully as themselves, it gives permission for others to do the same. Self-acceptance not only sets you free, it sets others free too. It creates a ripple of courage in the world. There is also healing in acceptance. Many wounds remain open not because of what happened, but because of the shame we carry about what happened. A mistake made years ago continues to torment because we refuse to forgive ourselves. A failure in the past continues to dictate our present because we refuse to accept it as part of our story. Healing begins not when the past changes, it cannot, but when our perspective does. Self-acceptance is the bandage that allows wounds to close. It is the medicine that turns scars into strength. Imagine standing before a mirror and instead of finding 10 flaws, finding one truth, that you are worthy of love exactly as you are. That shift can change everything. It can change how you walk into rooms, how you pursue dreams, how you handle rejection, how you build relationships. People who accept themselves radiate a quiet confidence that draws others in. They no longer beg for validation because they are rooted in their own worth. That rootedness is freedom. There will always be voices trying to tell you that you are not enough. Advertisements profit from your insecurity. Industries thrive on convincing you to fix yourself endlessly. Comparison culture thrives on keeping you trapped in fear. But the greatest act of rebellion is to look at yourself and say, I am already enough. That declaration silences the lies and opens the door to peace. Self-acceptance is not weakness, it is strength. It is the strength to stop fighting battles you can never win and to start living the life you were born to live. The most beautiful thing about this freedom is that it cannot be taken from you. People can take away possessions, opportunities, even relationships, but no one can take away your self-acceptance. Once you claim it, it is yours. It becomes a shield against criticism, a foundation against failure, a compass when you feel lost. Freedom built on external things can be stolen in a moment. Freedom built on acceptance remains no matter what storms come. So many live as prisoners of their own minds, waiting for a perfect version of themselves to appear. yet the gate to that prison is unlocked. The key has been in their hand all along. It is the choice to accept themselves as they are and to walk out of that cell into the open air of freedom. That freedom does not promise perfection. It promises peace. It promises joy. It promises a life no longer dictated by shame or fear. True freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want. It is the ability to be fully who you are without apology. It is the release of pretending, the end of comparison, the death of self-hatred. It is waking up and feeling at home in your own skin. It is walking into the world not to prove yourself, but to live yourself. That is the kind of freedom that no chains can hold, no critics can shake, and no failures can undo. That is the freedom of self-acceptance, and it is waiting for you to claim it. There comes a moment where everything you've heard, everything you've felt, begins to echo in the deepest corners of your heart, and you realize that the words were never just words, they were a mirror held up to your own soul. You can feel the stirring of excitement because a fire has been lit inside you, a fire that whispers you were made for more than waiting, doubting, or hiding. You can also feel the weight of fear, not the kind that destroys, but the kind that wakes you up, the kind that makes you see how fragile time really is, how dangerous it is to waste even one more day living small when you were born to live fully. There is wisdom flowing through your veins now, the kind that reminds you that scars are not curses, they are proof you survived. The kind that shows you that mistakes don't have to haunt you, they can teach you, they can shape you, they can make you unstoppable if you let them. And there is a strange peace in knowing you don't have to be perfect, because perfection was never the goal. Truth was. Being real was. Accepting yourself and rising from there was always the key. This is where the choice becomes sacred. You can step back into the life you've always known, repeating the cycles that drained you, or you can step forward into something far more alive. Your soul is craving freedom, your spirit is begging for growth, and your heart is demanding love that starts from within. Do not silence that call, because every second you delay is a second you can never get back. Life is not a rehearsal. It's happening now, and the next chapter has been waiting for you to pick up the pen. If there's one truth that wraps every lesson together, it's this. You are not broken beyond repair, you are not late to your destiny, and you are not too small to make a difference. You carry within you the power to shift your future, to rewrite your story, to break the chains of shame, and walk into a life that feels like freedom. And when you do, you will not only change yourself, you will awaken others who have been waiting for permission to do the same. The choice stands in front of you like an open door. Walk through it with courage. Walk through it with fire in your soul. Walk through it knowing the world has not yet seen the fullest version of who you are. Let this be the moment where fear bends to your will, where doubt loses its grip, and where your true life begins. Because nothing is more terrifying than a wasted life, and nothing is more beautiful than a soul that finally decides to live free.